back to the Sports Show. One of our favourites on the Sports Show, of course, Luke Marchioro is the genius around the SANFL, and he's been good enough to give us a bit of his time, all the way down from the Barossa, mate. Really? He's out Gawler Ways at the Barossa, mate. He's at Glenelg. He is everywhere. He's got his own helicopter now. Luke, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks, guys. Doing everything that I can to get these scoops on some SANFL players.
Oh, yeah, you've got some scoops on the SANFL players, mate. Let's have a look at, because there has been a fair bit going on with a few of the clubs, and then, funny enough, a couple of them not so much. So probably the one that's most surprising, South Adelaide, with the numbers that they've been able to get in this year.
Yeah, they've been an active recruiting club. We saw it last year when they brought Ryan Garthwaite and Oscar Claverino in, and Oscar Brownless, who didn't actually play for them this year. But this year they've been able to bring Ellie Smith in from Brisbane. They brought Zach Sproul, who's a key forward from GWS, in. They brought Sam Skinner back. So starting to bring those players back in to try and top up after what was probably a frustrating year for that group this year.
It would have been it was a frustrating year for South, because there are times last year where South were just, or this year, where they were just brilliant. And then there are times where, they're a bit wobbly. So this is they're good on them.
They were the reverse Collingwood last year. They lost a lot of games by less than a goal. I think they lost 3 games by less than 5 points. So, if they flip that, they play finals, and, they'll get Bryce Gibbs back as well next year. So they're going to have a bit of depth there. And if they can build on that and, keep building their squad with a good development program coming through, been some rezoning down there as well for them. So they're going to have a lot of juniors coming through as well. They'll be able to play some games for them too.
So they've got 7 players at this stage coming in, and there's still a couple in the wind that might come. The interesting one for me is because obviously some come in, some have got to go out. Ryan Garthwaite goes out, and the reason that's interesting for me is he's taken a role in an American college as a punter. We're going to start to see more of that. Do you think there'll be more players that will start to go into the college system?
Well, his fellow teammate, former teammate from Richmond, Ben Griffiths, is punting for USC, so a really big school over there in the US. Aaron Sipos, another St Kilda, ex-St Kilda's playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Dustin Fletcher's kids, there's quite a lot of them doing it. And they're kicking different kicks. You see the torpedoes and the drop punts, and it's using it as a real coaching tool. So I think he could have success. We saw him kick that torp after the siren to beat Port that day at Noarlunga, and I think that might have got him a bit of attention, I think, in college ranks over there.
Yeah.
Glenelg, mate, they've lost a few.
Lost a lot of experience. Andrew Bradley retired, so there's a couple others there as well, Michael Virgin as well. They brought in some rural talent. They brought in a couple of guys from their country zone, one from Millicent, one from South Gambia, and the big one is Cameron McGree, the ruckman from Ranella, former South Adelaide guy, who they brought in. We spoke about it all year with the ruck being their big issue. They've turned to this young fella here, hopefully to give him a crack and give their midfielders first use. It's still a pretty quality midfield, and hopefully can solve a few of their issues for them.
Yeah, so he's only 23 years old, 199 centimetres. He was best on ground in the grand final, so he's talented.
Oh, he's a super talented player. He's played at the level before as well, so he knows what it takes to get to that level too. And they're probably not finished with their recruiting. There's still a question mark over Brett Turner with them, whether he comes back to Glenelg. So there's going to be some options there for them. I think they're one to watch out for in the next few weeks with their recruiting.
A lot of movement.
North Adelaide playing the grand final, of course, lost to Norwood. They've brought in Sam Mays and Jesse White would be the big names for them. Connor Nutting as well.
Yeah, Sam Mays was probably one that we thought might have gone back there. North Adelaide Junior, connections to the footy club as well. Jesse White was probably the big surprise. Retired from Glenelg for a couple of years. Was playing at Broadview. Only played last month at Broadview. Obviously got the bug back to play footy. And with him playing there, it might give them some options with what they do. Maybe they move Dyson Hilda back. Maybe they move Mitch Harvey more forward. Gives them some flexibility in how they set up with their rucks and their forwards as well.
And the reason he is with North Adelaide, we should mention too, because he was with Glenelg, of course, Jesse White. Now he lives around the corner from the Oval with the family and whatever. I mean, that's a pretty good reason, I reckon.
Well, the interesting one with Jesse is I know that he made the phone call. He made the phone call to North saying he wanted to come back and play footy and thought North would be the fit, as you said, close to him.
Close to home.
It's not a bad one when someone of that calibre rings your footy club and
exactly
says.
Right,
and some of these players are doing that, though. This is the interesting part for me. Some of the clubs are actively recruiting, but there's actually players ringing clubs to be recruited to that club, which shows where the SANFL is at the moment.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a lot more of it over the next few weeks as well. Once the AFL delisted free agency period ends at the end of this week, you'll get a really good idea of where some of these clubs sit in terms of their recruiting. There's a lot of players that have missed opportunities that may be looking to get out and get a fresh start and may come to the SANFL as well.
Luke, what about the new rules for our 2 AFL clubs? They've got new rules now. You can have a bloke with 1 leg now, and you can, and all this other stuff. It's just ridiculous. I think it's a pie in the sky stuff. It doesn't look to me like it's a great fill up for both those clubs. It doesn't look any different to me.
I think it's a little bit of posturing in terms of they're trying to keep these clubs happy, but they also want to try and make sure that the SANFL clubs are being looked after. I think the idea behind it is to try and attract the best of those players that aren't playing at SANFL clubs. So guys that are coming out of these other leagues, in country leagues, where they might be getting a little bit more money per game.
Yeah.
They're trying to make it attractive for them to come and play for the Crows and Port to make them more competitive. So, we saw the Crows recruit really well last year. They got Isaiah McKenzie from Williston, and these type of, a few of these guys that were really, that were able to be there for 12 months, and now they're going to be able to contract them for 2 years. You can build on that group and really develop them as well, like you would develop your AFL list as well. So there's a little things like that in terms of contracts. It's a bit more stability for these guys, a little bit more money, and I mean, there's definitely some opportunities there. We've seen some guys progress to that next level.
Yeah.
Even a guy like Luke Sermon played. He was playing country footy. Played a few games for Port, ended up back at Norwood, won a premiership this year. So there's definitely a pathway for guys, and I think it can be attractive, and this financial incentive will probably encourage that a little bit more.
Mate, Norwood won the premiership last year. They've been pretty quiet. Are they one of those clubs that's just sitting and waiting to see where the AFL jettisons out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are. I think they've historically been that. They've been burnt a couple of times in the past with their SSP players. Obviously, they had Patrick Naish on this year, who ended up going to West Coast, and they lost guys in the mid-season draft. So I think they're going to sit back and wait and see where they sit with player availability. They've lost Jay Rantow, Henry Nelligan's moving overseas for 12 months to travel. So lost a couple of really good midfielders there. So they'll be one of those clubs on the hunt in the next few weeks for a couple of players as well. Westies have added a couple of guys in. Sam Frost from GWS Reserves player, and another couple of guys as well. So they've had a lot of guys go out, lost a bit of experience with Hartwell and Logan Hill. Jackson Edwards, who won their best and fairest, is going to the Gold. Come second in their best and fairest, is moving to Gold Coast for work. So they've lost a few players there, which will hurt them. But they're building on that group as well. Hopefully they've got to have some young guys that'll be pushing for the draft next year as well.
And I know I touched on South Adelaide that they've been pretty active in this, but Centrals have been at it pretty hard too.
Yeah, they have. They built really well the second half of the year. I thought they played some pretty good footy. Probably didn't win a lot of games. They've got Jazz McLennan back, obviously, who's a pretty quality player. Spent 4 years at the Gold Coast, and they picked up the Lochawak brothers from Sturt as well. So really talented Indigenous footballers. Can add some real pace and zip into that forward line. If you've got those three guys and Isaiah Dudley crumbing at the feet of some of their taller forwards who kicked a lot of goals this year, Aidan Grace and a few others, could cause a few headaches for some teams as well.
Looks good, doesn't it? The league, the SANFL looks okay, doesn't it? It looks healthy. Yeah. When you start to talk about the players that they're bringing in here, it really does make the SANFL look very healthy.
I think we're inching closer and closer towards parity in that competition as well. I think you've seen it this year. The gap between first and seventh was about 2 games, and even with some of these teams recruiting as active as they are, like Central District, it's only going to tighten that gap up even further as well.
Wow.
Sturt, Woodville, West Torrens, just quietly go about their business, don't they?
Yeah, Sturt have brought back Charlie Parker from the Western Bulldogs. I think if Jared Leonard doesn't find an AFL home, I think they'd like to think that they would be in the box seat for him. The Eagles, I think they're just sitting back nicely as well. Obviously brought Zane Williams back, who was pretty vocal about his departure from Geelong. They're a club that's got players that are out of the AFL system. A guy like James Rowe potentially could end up back there as well. And they're one of these clubs that'll just sit back and wait and just sort of pick off what they need and see how things shake out in terms of, rushing into it or, jumping out and, chasing guys early.
But there's always those ones, the name causes problems. So be it an Edwards, be it a Jarman. See, Benny Jarman comes back to North after a year away and just kind of sneaks in quietly. It's not a bad way for some of those players to come in and establish their own identity, is it?
No, I think so. I think it's just about an opportunity for these guys as well. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to go out of the spotlight and sometimes find your love for footy again. I think a lot of these guys at SANFL level have done that and then moved on to other opportunities. Like a guy like Riley Knight had a fantastic couple of years, out of the AFL system. Sometimes you can fall on it, but he's had a really good year and really enjoyed his footy and talked about how much he loves playing at the Eagles. So I think you see that with a lot of those guys as well. It's a great opportunity for them.
Hey, mate, we always appreciate your time, mate. You give us nothing but the best, mate. We know you've been busy. What's the latest stories coming from you, mate?
Well, there's plenty going on at the minute. Lots of, cricket season, obviously. The weather's not indicative, but, the grade cricket's really heating up at the moment. Obviously, with the 2 divisions, there's been some pretty active recruiting. It's going to be a pretty hot season this year, I think, with a lot of clubs as well.
Because they've got to finish, don't they?
Have to finish in the top 8 or you're in Division 2, and then all of a sudden you start getting golf with players. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, especially in the first half of the year with games being weather affected as well.
Do you think they'll lose? Do you think the club that finishes 9th might lose players to these top 8?
I think absolutely. I think it's going to be really hard to play shield cricket if you're making Division 2 runs. So if you can play in Division 1 and be making runs in Division 1, it's going to make your case for higher honours a bit easier, I think, than playing in Division 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I agree with you, mate. I think it will be. The barbecue in, mate, a couple of nights a week down there.
Been very busy, yes, absolutely. So
best steak in Adelaide, mate, without doubt. Glenelg barbecue, mate. If you don't go and eat down there, if you don't go and eat down there, you've got something wrong with you. If you need a steak, I'll tell you right now, Luke. Always appreciate your time, mate. Do a ripping job. Luke Marchioro, our special guest. Stay with us still. A bit more to come.